Bonjour tout le monde. Hi Jill.
Hello.
How are you?
Great.
How's your con today?
It's good.
Yeah? It's nice. Raise your hand if you were psyched to see some rain. That was good. One hand. Nice. We'll take it. We'll take it. I'm so psyched to be here again and again. We're so fortunate to be here together. It's a great group as always. We're excited to get to know Jill better. She said she's going to ask me some questions. You might get to know me a little bit better. So we'll see. You're probably more interested in what she has to say. So Jill, tell us a little bit about how you got started in the media business. Tell us what you do, how it all started. Let us off.
Buckle up.
Buckle up.
Thanks. I'm so excited for this chat. Really appreciate you and brand Innovators having me. I think when I think back on my career, I'm like most grateful for the fact that I've been able to kind of work on all different sides of our industry and just the perspective that's given me to really be a more effective marketer and just have a lot of empathy for what it takes, I think, for all of us to really do all of the incredible work that we call from each market all the time. I started working in some small agencies, which was really incredible because at that time, especially, that meant as a media planner, I did everything from research to media planning, negotiation, tracking the ads, the whole deal. And so really got to appreciate sort of every step of that process. Really early became super interested in digital and just like what it would mean and be like to market on the web in a way that was like really interactive and capacity different from print and out of home, TV and other things that I had done. And got to do that for brands like AT&T and American Airlines, and also just the measurability that came with that, the gratification of understanding the impact of various campaigns. I was in Texas at the time, and always kind of had the ambition to move to New York City and try things out there. And so I had the opportunity to join Digitas and work on the American Express business at that time, which was this really incredible intersection of just leading agency and brand in the moment of just the explosion of big data and the evolution of programmatic technology and everybody kind of trying to figure that out, and just a very dynamic experience to be a part of. But also wanted to try out sort of the sales side of the industry and went to a revenue-oriented sort of business in a small, startup capacity, basis technologies as it is now, and what it was like to live in that culture, to partner with sales teams, and just kind of what the other side of the equation sort of experienced. Then had the opportunity to go to American Express, obviously a brand that I love and had admired for a very long time from a marketing perspective as the U.S. media lead. And so continue to focus on digital evolution or digital transformation and the evolution kind of how we go to market. And over the last 9 years have taken on more responsibility to now oversee our global brand media, our measurement and analytics practice, and also sort of how we think about social platform strategy and content, and bringing all those things together to drive brand consideration for our products and services among Gen Z, millennial, and small business owners.
Oh, thank you for walking us through that. So that was a good one. That was a good one. So I'm an American Express card holder. I do feel that I kind of graduated when I got my first one. Like I felt a little bit more special, honestly. I like the weight of the card. I don't know if you had anything to do with that. So thank you for that. So that's a lot of experience. I love that you went onto the sales side, right? Did that give you a different interpretation of how to deal with vendors out there? Did that help?
It gave me a lot more empathy.
Yeah, I bet it did. Seriously, yeah.
And just, I think, like, that appreciation now for, I think, the challenges that exist within media companies and platforms, and organizations and just what it takes to build a really great partnership and how to come up with sort of mutually beneficial solutions and ideas together.
That's super cool. So, so over that span, that time, there's been a ton of changes in the marketplace, and there's also these idioms out there that history repeats itself, right? So we have change, and then we have challenges, right? So what's changed for the better, but what still remains a challenge?
Yeah, great question. Big one. So I think there has been so much change and certainly no shortage of challenges. When I think about it from a marketer's perspective, I would just roll all of that up into just incredible complexity as a challenge, right? Whether it is thinking about fragmented landscape and just like what that means and how we connect and what's happening in streaming and where is everyone going and how do we think about audiences across channels and within them. New solutions like retail media networks popping up and what do we do with those? Things like data and all of the exciting opportunities that come with that to make our media more targeted and impactful, but also the restrictions that are continuing to evolve from a privacy perspective and navigating all of that. Even like new ways to connect in terms of innovators or influencers and creators, and how do we best leverage them to drive business outcomes? Just all of that creates a lot to work through, and we are super fortunate that we have a lot of things to focus on internally too, right? But we have really great partners in our agencies, in particular, UN, that helps us navigate all of that from a media perspective. And I think underneath all of that is just with all of that change and complexity, how can our measurement solutions continue to evolve to keep up with that, and how do we string it all together and figure out how to continue to measure the KPIs that we really care about in really new ways and platforms.
Yeah. So you think about the old days when we just bought linear television, a couple phone calls, you could put a ton of money in the market. And now with the digital landscape, it is a ton more complex, right? You have to check all these boxes. So if we could snap our fingers in the future, doesn't have to be realistic, what would you change? Just like that. It's done. I'll give you a starter point. I'll go first. Thank you for asking. I think that marketers spend too much time in creating hundreds and hundreds of creatives, right? For many, many target audiences. And if they could snap their fingers, they'd have one creative that worked for everybody. That's one example. And the time that's spent on that effort to actually work with, and there's a lot of good work out there that's going on. It's a really important part of the topic and a really, really valuable component, but it's a lot of time. And is it worth that? Is it worth the time? So that would be my snap fingers.
With unrealistic.
Yeah, I did. That's why I wanted to lead it off. So you can go realistic if you want. It's fine.
I'll go with dreams. I think one of the things that I wish we could just all make better as we think about the ecosystem of media partners and brands and consumers is just a better experience, an ad experience for everyone, one that feels more customer first, more premium in nature, that is a really meaningful, high quality connection. And I think that takes us all to figure out, right? Like there's growing pressure on media partners to grow revenue. There's pressure on brands to grow their business, and consumers who are just increasingly trying to avoid ads altogether on ad-free platforms and deploying ad blockers or skipping ads. And so, thinking about a way that we can all come together to sort of serve everyone's needs in a way that really puts the customer first in creating a really more exceptional ad experience, and arguably one that would probably be a lot more effective in the end. I think as a brand, we think about exceptional experiences all the time and always have. Totally. That certainly pulls through the media approach as well, which is really leaning into higher quality, more premium attention environment.
Is that where it's going? I mean, because of these complexities, are we trying to just really focus on the premium experience, or is that because you worked on many brands, right? Or is that just an American Express statement?
I hope it's one that is more universal
Yeah.
than that.
Mm-hmm.
For all of us, I think not everyone has that, maybe luxury, perhaps,
Yeah.
or a more DTC brand, or someone that has to focus in sort of lower funnel methods, perhaps. But I think what we see in the data is that sort of attention has a high correlation to outcome.
Got it.
Right? And so if we fundamentally believe that if we prioritize places where people are actually connecting with that ad that you mentioned and taking away the right thing that will ultimately drive stronger outcomes.
So a bright light on the horizon is more premium content. Although brands aren't necessarily, consumers don't necessarily want to see them because they're trying to get out of them. To your point, so you're kind of killing two birds with one stone, right? You say this is worth the time because it's the content. Now my brand experience is going to be that much better. So that's a bright spot, and you know that you can go after that. Are there other bright spots that we should keep our eyes on that you see?
I think for the industry at large, I think just talent is a bright spot. I think with all of this change that we're experiencing, it's really exciting both from our agencies as well as people on our team that have sort of not only been digital natives, but they're growing up and utilizing the platforms that we're trying to really excel at and leverage more completely. That's just more innate for them. And I think that there's so much for us to learn from sort of the next generation of talent in terms of getting to better experiences, better outcomes, better utilization of these types of platforms.
Yeah.
So I would say that is definitely one, and I think very hopeful for ongoing evolution in the space too.
So, in the early days of your career, I assume you had to do a lot of being the digital specialist. I'm sure that was more of a beginning stage of, hey, this is digital world. How's this thing going to work, right? And over time, the digital specialists have become the leaders of the drivers of the business, right? But we still have a ton of legacy. I don't even call it legacy. It's traditional. There's still a lot of traditional metrics that are out there that worked. So in the organization, is it tough to find that combo of traditional metrics and digital metrics, or media, special operations, etc.? Do you need both when you're thinking about it, or can you just have the digital piece because we know that that's where most of it's going?
Yeah, I think for us it's really important just to focus on one or two key metrics that you don't think about that necessarily so differently across channels, because how can you really understand relativity to one another and keep consistency, not to mention it's very difficult to explain to anyone else what it actually means. And so I would say thinking about wading through all of that with what are the one or two really critical KPIs that you're going to focus on, and consistency across all of your measurement suite in terms of getting at those really critical things. Otherwise, I think you just really get bogged down in the swirl of looking at this mountain of data from different sources and trying to triangulate what does this mean or that, and how do those things fit together, which I think just sits with teams and takes time and resources too, and then you sometimes have the ability to lose sight of outcomes. But I think for us, we really try to stay focused and prioritize and reprioritize our learning agenda and what's going to make the biggest impact for the business.
So if you have one or two KPIs, is that for internal needs to make sure everybody knows what's going on out in the ecosystem? And then secondly, can you buy against those KPIs, or do you have to translate them into the market?
You have to translate them into the market in our case.
Yeah.
Our number one KPI is brand consideration.
Okay.
And, as you may know, various brand studies are a way to understand how exposure to our ads impact that KPI. We're also constantly looking at ROI sort of at a channel level in terms of how are we doing, and focus on those two things. But it's very difficult. It's impossible to buy against brand consideration, not only because it's like sometimes a little bit slow to move, but that transactable ability, it just isn't there. So thinking about other leading indicators of that, and how you can continue to buy in a more effective means, more closely tied to that outcome.
Yeah, right. That correlation between the two, that's a balancing act, right? Because people are still selling impressions, right? So tell us about your target audience. Who are you going after these days? What's that all about?
Yeah, we're really focused on better connecting with Gen Z and millennial consumers, and like I mentioned, of course, like a long legacy in reaching small business owners. I think we're doing a pretty great job. I just say so myself. Not just from a media perspective, but we continue to invest in and refresh our products to continue to add really rich and relevant value for those customer segments. We're seeing 60% of acquisition come through in those cohorts, which is really incredible over the last couple of years. And I think from a media perspective, like I said, we're thinking about really effective ways to reach them. Obviously, reach and frequency and really relevant and breakthrough ad creative, but also how can we do that outside of your more traditional ad environments? And so prioritizing investments in kind of two ways. One being branded content and sort of media-led content partnerships. The work that we've done with The Bear on Hulu, incredibly popular show, helping us to sort of have presence in ad-free environments and create connectivity to those like important cultural moments, like reinvention of water cooler content. Yeah. We've done similar work with Billions on Paramount Plus and Yellowstone. We see really strong results from an ROI perspective and double-digit lifts in terms of brand consideration there. So lots of great proof points to continue to validate. That is an interesting area of innovation for us. And then two, leaning into platform sort of native utility or functionality. So we have a very large partnership with F1, and recently we had a race in Montreal. And
I was there.
Oh, wow.
I was fantastic. I couldn't see it because I didn't buy grandstand tickets. And you can't. Has anyone seen? Did you guys know that you gotta buy grandstand tickets? Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was so bummed out. But my son and I snuck in, and we got the seat. So that was that. I'm sorry. Segue.
Yeah.
Great event.
Good to know. So we did our first ever Snap AR lens that sort of created a bit of an immersive experience on the platform, raised awareness for sort of the activation that we had there alongside really great ads. And so thinking about the complement of both an ad experience and also sort of more breakthrough functionality in new and interesting ways.
Yeah, I love the notion, these are my words, not yours, but branded content. I recently learned that General Mills, the maker of the cereal, when they wanted to sell that cereal back in the 60s, 50s, there was no kids content on TV. So they went out and built Bullwinkle. And who was the other guy? Rocky. Thank you. Rocky and Bullwinkle. They went out and built that. And then they negotiated airtime and they put that out there so they could put their ads against it. Did you know? I did not
know that.
Isn't that a great story? So they got all this free media spaces with it and kids content, and then you could see what happened to cartoons. Have you guys thought about doing branded content? Like, is that something that's ever on the radar?
I mean, maybe not to
the degree. Well, I mean, there's only two. One
kid dream.
Someday we'll get there.
But yeah, no, like we're definitely thinking about it. As I think we do. We're a very metric organization, and so we're figuring out.
Such a strong brand, right? Like, and a long brand's been in the market that people believe in. I think maybe I speak for myself. I mean, I think it's got so much legs to it, but obviously you don't want to dilute it the wrong way. So that's a nice balance, right? It's tricky.
Yeah, it is tricky. back to sort of that ecosystem and partnerships and making it work from a partner perspective. We're talking about media-led sort of content partnerships as well. It's hard to navigate, and there isn't a great operating model, but I think that's the beauty of it really being sort of an innovation space and experimenting with lots of different ways in there to figure out sort of what is most effective from an outcome perspective, but also what is sort of the most efficient way to sort of execute those types of things as well, and think about where we place our bets and investment.
Yeah, it's cool.
What about you?
Yeah, I was
you didn't tell me what you thought was one of the biggest challenges, or maybe what we as brands could be doing better.
Well, there's two questions in there. So I think the fragmentation is really challenging for brands. I would not want to be in your shoes. I think it's a little unfair that ad tech companies have taken control of the relationship with the customer just because they built ad tech. I think the relationship with the customer needs to stay in the hands of principals. Right? So publishers build content for a reason. I believe they have a direct ownership responsibility with that. They don't always get it to the degree that they should, in my opinion. And same with brands. And so that's one of our philosophies over at Adform, and we can talk about that some other day. But I think that's a challenge. And as a result of that, you can't see where the ecosystem is actually having an impact to the degree that you should. And so you think about what you can see on your own and operated platforms, you can see a lot, and you can have that relationship with the customer. But the second that you want to go out and find that customer, new ones like that, it's like somebody puts something over the lens, like Vaseline on top of my glasses, and that's terrible. You can't see the world. And so I think that's a shame. And then as a result of that, I think it's costly, because not being able to see the effective reach and frequency across your platform drives up costs. Because if your optimal frequency is 10 in any given environment, you may be getting 10 on one platform and then 10 on another, and they're not going to tell you if there was overlap there. And I also think that's a shame, because brands drive the economy, right? They put products into the market, they drive the economy. We're all here because of brands. And if they lose that thread from what's going on in the ecosystem, the economy eventually gets impacted. So I think there's too few that own too much. It's a classic oligopoly situation out there, and we need to do something about it. So can you please do something about that?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. No, I think it's changing. I think you got the government that's going to come in on one angle. You got initiatives with the A&A programmatic folks that are trying to say we need more trust and transparency. We got to get rid of this MFA stuff. That's all legitimate, right? So people are making changes. They really are. But I think this is a good example where government's very helpful. And I don't know if anybody saw this, but the Surgeon General just put out this announcement that they're going to put a label against social media that it negatively impacts teen health. So that's a step in a direction. I'm not sure where that's going to go. So that's my point of view. Thanks for asking.
Of course. Yeah, I think a lot of that is right on, and I think some of it is just a little bit slow.
Yeah, it's slow. Okay, for a lighter question, what's your favorite movie?
I don't know if it's actually lighter. It's The Shawshank Redemption.
Ooh. Great movie. Good reaction.
If we're going based on most watched, it would be How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Okay.
Lighter.
All right. I haven't seen that one.
What's yours?
Willy Wonka, the original. That's the best. He's just amazing. And it's funny, side story again, nothing to do with the panel. That movie was made by the chocolate manufacturer to promote their chocolate, and they had a problem with the formula, and they were planning on shipping it to all the cinemas, and they couldn't. So they had to decide: should we go forward with this? Should we actually put the movie out with no chocolate that anybody could buy? And so they went for it. And it's become one of my favorite. So you can go back to be a kid. But that's a fun one. It's a brand. It's brand-driven content.
I guess brands drive the world.
That's what I'm saying. And that is how we want to end this panel. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
All right.